Welcome to The Real Estate Show on WGBF AM with your host, Charlie Butler. This is where you'll learn to sell your home quickly and for more money. And now, the host of The Real Estate Show, the guy who guarantees to sell your home or he'll buy it himself, Charlie Butler.
Good Sunday morning, Tri-State. This is the Charlie Butler Real Estate Show. And as I am every Sunday, I have my lovely co-host, Evie Barr.
Good morning, Charlie.
Good morning, Evie. How you doing today?
I am fabulous. What about you?
Business is good. Life's just good overall. So we've got great guests today. We've got one of the veteran investors in this area in real estate, Dave Herman, is with us. And Dave, who I've known for 20 plus years, and Dave is going to, we're going to go into a little bit about, the new investor.
Yes.
What they, I just completely lost my train of thought there. But the new investor, what they can expect, as they're getting into this.
Yes. It's not as easy as seen on TV.
No, it's it's not an as seen on TV deal. But we also, as we were talking last week, the next 2 weeks we have some great guests. Stacy Stevens, president of Area Planning Commission, next week.
Yes.
And then Dana Bug. Dana saying I forgot my name, didn't you? Dana Bug, who is the regional sales manager for Jago Homes.
Yes.
For Indiana, is going to be with us. So some great guests coming up.
Yeah. So my question for you is, what are you seeing with inventory right now?
God, I get tired talking about this, Abby.
Well, I'm sorry, but is it starting to pick up at all with more sellers coming on the market?
I mean, a little, but I mean, it's still. Is it that the buyers there are just so many of them? I mean, it's picking up a little bit, but it's like, I mean, we tell people every week, it's like, people, just list your house. I mean, you can get a good price out of it right now. There hasn't been you couldn't get a price like this out of your house since 2006.
Yes.
I mean, it's been over 10 years since you could get a price like this. So, I know we go into this every week and people go, oh God, he's going to start talking about, inventory's low. And when we say inventory, I just want to make sure everybody understands, we're talking about houses on the market.
Yes. And I think it's an important thing to realize as well. I'm going to set you up to talk about this. If somebody's on the fence as to whether or not they need to list it or if they need to do major improvements, can't they call your office and talk to one of your members?
Absolutely. They can call us, and we do this all the time. We'll go out to a house sometimes a year ahead of time. So, where it's going to take quite a bit of, things that they're going to need to do. They may not be quite ready yet, but they're ready to start putting together their budget and how much is it going to cost them to do, whether it be carpet, painting, do they need to, whatever they need to do.
Right.
And a new, an updated kitchen, updated bathrooms, could be a number of things depending on the home.
Yes.
So, we'll go in and we'll tell them, okay, here's what your home's worth now. Now, if current market conditions stay the same, with these updates, here's what your home will be worth. So, and another thing I think people get a misconception is they think that as realtors, we only want to deal with the really expensive homes.
No.
Yeah. The hardest homes to sell, and for those of you who are in really expensive homes,
yes,
you already know this, are the homes $500,000 and up.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you get $750,000 and up, and it gets harder. You get $1 million and over, it gets harder because. Don't get me wrong. We're willing to do those. We just let everybody know up front. Those take longer.
Right, and right now with the inventory being low, it's really, is it 300,000 and less?
Yes. 300,000 less is flying off the market. I remember, hadn't been that long ago. We would be, we were saying 200 and less.
Right.
And now it's 300 and less. The hot spot, and Dave Herman's here with us, who does a lot and who studies this a lot, I know. But the hot spot's still like 120 to 200, except there are certain neighborhoods that still sell well in that 80 to 100,000 range.
Sure.
The neighborhoods that have been kept up nicely.
Yes. And there's so many first-time home buyers out there that I have that are looking, and wherever they find a house, a lot of times I'm hearing that they know multiple offers are going to come in. So they want to be able to present their highest and best offer right off the bat. But, those first-time home buyers, they're looking a lot of times for under 200,000 or under 150 or even 100. So
yeah,
that's something for a seller to remember is if they're ready to take that step up with their home, a bigger house, or even if they're an empty nester and they want to downsize, now's the perfect time to list it with the Charlie Butler team.
And I may have told this story before. I honestly don't remember, but Dave Herman's probably sitting over here saying, yeah, you don't remember something. That'll be the day.
True.
But anyway, I'm in Austin, Texas at Keller Williams' home office, flying back and going through TSA
Right.
at the airport. And a guy comes up to me at work. A TSA guy says, sir, could you step out of line, please? I'm like, what did I do? I'm just going along. It's no big deal.
Right.
And so I go over where he said, and he says, I'd forgot I had a Keller Williams shirt on.
Yes.
And he said, and he's old. He was probably late 50s, early 60s. He said, listen, my son's been trying to buy a home. And he keeps getting beat out. Right there. Yeah, just pull me out of line. They thought the people probably thought I was a terrorist. They're pulling me out of line.
You need to wear a Keller Williams shirt every day.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then everybody think I'm a terrorist.
Yes.
No.
No, not that you're a terrorist.
Thank you, Abby.
No, I was just thinking.
I know, I'm kidding.
Because, whether they're looking to list or sell their home, you're the guy to talk to. And even if they're looking to transfer out of state, you can connect them to a Keller Williams agent in a different state,
anywhere,
city, whatever.
any
And
country.
that shows the strength of a KW, because in Florida, they're strong as can be down there.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're recognizable everywhere.
One was probably outside of Texas, Dave, probably the strongest area. And that strange voice you heard is Dave Herman.
Hello there.
Yeah. And Dave, Dave, you probably, we were talking about this the other day. We're not sure, but you may have rehabbed and sold. I still have a hard time saying the word flipping, because when I started in this, Dave's one of the first investors I dealt with. And back 20 years ago, you didn't use the word flipping.
No, we rehabbed.
It was rehabbed.
For a profit, hopefully.
How long have you been doing investment property?
Investment, almost 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah, close to 40 years.
So Dave, you see the TV shows that are out there.
I see them most Sunday mornings, yes.
And, where within an hour, they've rehabbed the property.
Yeah.
And bought the property, rehabbed it.
Yeah.
The realtor comes over, puts the open house sign out, and gets 3 offers.
Right.
That's how it really works, right?
Well, maybe in some markets. Our market is great, like you said. And I will mention that, for buyers today in our Evansville market, they do need to get a pre-approval letter, because that's a very viable piece of paper to have when you do start shopping. Because when I have a house for sale, whether it be with a realtor or even my owner, when I have an inquiry on a house, one of the first questions I ask, have you talked to a lender yet? And most of them say no. And one of the first things I say to them is, that's really what you need to do, irregardless if you buy my house or not. That's something you got to have of a lender of your choice, because now you have something that means a little bit to the buyer in case you have multiple offers, like you said. And so, but getting back to the TV show that you see on Sunday mornings.
Dave, before you leave that point, though, just quickly, if you've got offers that are close and one's got a pre-approval letter from someone that especially a company like Evie's Waterstone Mortgage, and they're a little bit less, but the other one doesn't, are you going to take the one that's a little bit less?
I think the one that I would consider the most is if I have a connection with that lender as far as their reputation.
Right.
They can, they do work with buyers, and they make transactions close. And if it's a out-of-town lender, as an example, that really doesn't really hold water to me. I'd rather have it be someone that you can see their eyeballs, quite honestly.
Right.
And so that'd be your local lender. I would have more, that'd be more truthful for me.
And he's leading right into the lender part.
Well,
here.
it's funny because I've heard Dave's name, and it started out, we were talking about him in real estate whenever he was on that side of not doing the investments or the rehabs, but the real estate portion. And then it kind of clicked for Dave that we had recently had a closing.
Correct.
And honestly, Dave was a pleasure to work with and
Well,
made
that buyer
everything
was
easy.
a VA buyer, number one,
Yes.
if I remember correctly. And sometimes those are really not difficult, but more time consuming. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I don't know how that buyer and you guys got it done, but it was done in like 4 or 5 or less than 6 weeks, which is really
For VA,
it's kind of unheard of because typically, and you would know better than I would,
Right.
as far as getting a transaction to close, it's about 4 to 6 weeks, I would think, in today's world. And to get a VA in 5 or 6 weeks, that's remarkable. So you did a great job with that
Well, thank you.
transaction, and that was just about a month or two ago.
Yes.
And so, but with today's buyers, please get your pre-approval letter from the lender that they want to. And some lenders do VA, some do FHA, some do conventional. Whatever you qualify for, just get that letter for your behalf. That way, the seller, like myself, if I got a house for sale, when our realtor presents an offer, they can say this buyer is so serious enough they have already done their paperwork. And another thing that's really important to say is that not only have they got their paperwork pre-approval letter from the lender, but they have gave them 2 weeks worth of documentation of employment, credit history, landlord history. That's kind of, it almost kicks the ball down the court a little bit farther, so to speak, that time-wise. And so that means something more to me because, again, that tells me as a seller that buyer has gone the extra mile, so to speak, to get serious about buying a home that they decide to buy. So I think that's important to have.
Yes.
Well, and I think, Dave, you make a great point, and not just for an investor like yourself, but someone that's selling their personal home. Mm-hmm.
They would want to know that.
They would want to know these
or
things.
Any seller would want to know that. That's a fact. That's for sure.
So, I mean, we'd been talking about trying to help the new investors here. Which, and it's a funny thing. I'll tell a quick story, not on Dave, but about Dave. My business partner, Jenny McBride, and I are in a seminar several years ago in Atlanta. And they introduced this guy, and he had rehabbed or flipped over 600 homes. And this guy's on stage. And I remember Jenny leans over to me and she says, yeah, I mean, we're listening to this guy. He hadn't even flipped as many as Dave Herman has.
I've done a few.
Yeah,
I've done a few.
And
quite a few.
Yeah, several, a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But anyway, Dave, we talked earlier about the TV shows. We really never got into that. But for the new investor, they see the TV shows. And they're thinking, and we get a lot of those calls. Obviously. Yeah. A lot of the TV shows is really a flipping project. So sidestep that for a second. If we're talking about an investor to be a landlord, that's a different whole new ball game. Because if you want to be an investor in Evansville, and this is your first time out, one of the things I would recommend doing is join or go as a guest to the POMA program. Good point.
POMA. Google that up in Evansville. I was one of the on the original board.
Well, you and I both were on the original board.
And on the original board, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Yeah. And it was Monty Feather brainstorm, quite honestly, and still is.
Right.
And what it does, it's really a community service bridge between landlords and the local government officials. What they want us to do or what they expect out of landlords.
Right.
But at the same time, you have subject matter of speakers that is of interest to landlords and, the do's and don'ts, so to speak, of a landlordship. And like the rental registry, most people don't know May 10th, if you own one property in Vanderbilt, I think it's one, it could be maybe 6, but if you own a small number of properties or more in Vanderbilt County, you have to register them with the county every year. Well, I will tell you as a truth, this happened to me about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I got an email from the county, we'll say, and they said, Dave, you forgot to register XYZ, a single address, a house.
And for those who don't know, Dave has several houses.
Yeah, I got a few rental houses. And this one particular home is actually in a corporation that actually owns a house. Wow. And I totally didn't do it last year, guilty as charged. They fined me for that one house. That was a $25 fine, no big deal, we paid it. But my point is, you need to register those properties because they want to keep people in check with, landlords responsible for their properties and so forth. But as far as working, starting new into the business of rental, you need to, contact someone at Keller Williams, someone at Charlie Butler's team's office, say, hey, I want to be a first-time homeowner as far as the investor is concerned. I own a home now. Typically, if you're going to be an investor, you already have a personal home. Right. We got that. And so now I want to I work an 8-to-5 job at wherever, and I have, I want to expand out my portfolio to include, a few homes over the next few short years to add to my retirement, so to speak. And a lot of people talk about doing that, and they actually act on that. So my recommendation would be obviously contact their realtor at Keller Williams, but also they could go online through kellerwilliams.com on their
KW.com.
Exactly, on the local website. And I personally, not looking for really any rental properties because I got my enough, but I still daily go on there 3 or 4 times a day to see what pops up and what sells, because you got to know what value is out there as an investor. That helps yourself, obviously, and then you see what inventory is out there. But again, sometimes you need to contact a realtor and let them know what you're looking for. And before you even do that, if you're that first-time investor, you need to contact your lender that's going to help you finance this house. And just make a point, if you want to buy a $60,000 house, a rent house, then you may talk to your lender because they may require 20, 25, or maybe 30% down. Right. It depends on a lot of variables that only your lender is going to be able to answer for you. And so keep that in mind. Now, you're not going to be able to put down 5 or 10%. Typically, you can't. Again, your lender will let you know that. But when I bought my first one, I remember, I had to give, as you do today, to buy a personal home, you got to give a lot of documentation of yourself. And that lender will decide, okay, we will decide to loan you 80% of what the sale price is, and you put 20% down as a guideline. That may be a guideline that you may use to decide to buy a home. And you don't have to go out and buy 5 or 10 or 20 homes in 1 year. And matter of fact, I recommend don't do that, quite honestly, because I've seen people make too many mistakes because they charged in with a lot of enthusiasm, and they think they got the same whip because they see TV shows, they read all the books. Okay, that's just not real life. It just really isn't. So do ones and twosies and just see if you like it or not. And where would I buy one at? That's your personal choice. I remember when I first started 40 years ago, a book I read, and had a realtor broker tell me, look where you live. Look in the neighborhood that you live in. And when you drive home at nighttime from your office, go a different route home. Go through another side street. I get lost sometimes going home on purpose just because I want to see different streets and different for sale signs.
The new realtors today, when I tell them that, look at me like I got 3 heads.
Yeah. And I know today's Google solves a lot of problems. I got that. But, but physically driving by, you kind of get to learn to see, you may put your eye on a home that looks like it's vacant and grass is tall, and then maybe a future foreclosure possibly. Talk to the neighbors around that house that you have interest in and say, hey, what's going on? And see if the utilities are cut off or not. You could call a veteran. They're going to tell you if they're on or off and how long they've been on or off. those are kind of little flags you could kind of learn from.
Dave, one of the things that you said, and I was thinking about this at the same time. You and I have both seen people that, let's face it, some of the guys that are a lot of the guys that are successful here locally in investing will get together, have lunch,
True.
and there'll be and talk about the business, talk
Absolutely.
about the bankers, things like that.
Absolutely.
But I've seen people come to those lunches that were fairly new, and they see some of these guys that have been busting their butt for a long time, driving nice cars, talking about nice vacations, things like this, and they want to be just like you or someone like that.
Well,
and it usually doesn't end real well.
It doesn't work well for them.
Yeah.
And the truth of the story is they don't realize how long we've been in the business.
Exactly.
And they think it's a get-rich-quick scenario, and it truly cannot be. It is not. I mean, if it's a 15 to 20-year play, in my opinion. Can it be less than that? Sure. Don't bank on it. If it does, you did really well. But bank on a 15 to 20-year, pay back or return on this investment in the single-family home you bought, or it could be a multi-family home as far as that goes. But this investment that you bought, I think if you pay, and some people decide, well, I want to pay cash for their home. And cash is king, I will say. We both know that.
Right.
And that is more powerful to the seller when you have a cash offer. That's rare to do that if you are the new investor, because you don't have that kind of wealth accumulated. So you go back to your banker. And let me speak to your banker about that one more time. Once you actually have your 1 or 2, 5 homes that you think okay with, and that's fine, what I did is I emailed my banker on a monthly or quarterly basis of an update of what was going on in my life. And when I'm talking about how my rentals were going, I had no vacancies this month. I had 10% vacancy this last quarter. Whatever the facts are, I kept my banker, good or bad, I kept my banker pleased with that information. And I would tell you, I'm not a banker, but I didn't know my bankers had come to me down the road after the fact. And I wasn't doing this I thought it was smart. And they came to me later, and years later after that, you don't realize they said to me, we hard copied those things. We filed that in your file. And when we got audited by whoever was audited them, and they open up your file and see all this documentation, you made us look good, because that communication they just didn't see. I recommend doing that. I still do it to this day. I just sent one out yesterday to my banker, and just because I do.
And from you and I, first off, I need to. You are listening to the Charlie Butler Real Estate Show, as Evie just reminded me. Forgot what show it was.
Waterstone, yes, mortgage.
With Waterstone Mortgage. But and your point though, Dave, about staying in contact with your bankers, give them a lot of information. And Dave and I have worked together a lot over the years, and I saw things like this pay off for Dave, because when things did crash in 2008, 2009,
that was some tough times.
A lot of bankers said, hey, Charlie, we really don't want to do this investment property right now. And Dave wasn't the only one. There were others too. But Dave was one that they said, you go ahead and bring his, and we'll do it. Yeah. And not as many banks. I'm sure there were some amounts.
It was definitely some tough times.
But there were banks that stuck in there. And actually, because of how you handled yourself leading up to that actually turned out to be a pretty good time for you.
Right.
I have a question.
Sure.
From a banker's point of view. If someone is looking to get into having investment properties or flipping homes, either one, you've talked about, which is very true, a lot of times whenever someone is purchasing an investment property, Waterstone actually has a program that allows for 15% down, but the majority of the banks are going to ask for 20 or 25% down right off the bat.
That's good to know.
Realistically, what type of money should someone have in the bank to pay for the improvements? Because a bank might not finance it right off the bat.
Right. if you're lucky to do the improvements yourself and do the hands-on stuff, that's where you're going to save a lot of money.
Yes.
And if you're going to say, well, I don't know how to put a menu blind up, as an example. Well, okay, Google it up because it's right there. Okay, all you got to do is YouTube anything. And to this day, we YouTube probably every week on how to cut something that's an odd piece of project that we got going on. And, we got three right now that we're working on, and we got 2 to start next month. And so we still use a YouTube or Google, what we don't know. And as far as money-wise, I would think you need to have in reserve for improvement. You're talking about improvements, right? I would say $10,000 just to be safe. That could be a high figure because you could get by with $5,000 if you like. But I did want to say real quickly, in my opinion, and like Charlie talked about the investor group that we had in the past, we still meet occasionally, and not as often as we did years ago. But in my experience, I realized there's three types of investors. There's A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. A is the guy or girl who is the first-time home buyer who wants to buy a house that has good cash flow. Well, when you buy a house, a single-family home, good cash flow, you're not going to pay a lot of money for that, quite honestly.
Right.
It's a numbers game. So you're going to pay maybe $25,000 or $30,000 for that house and get $600 a month rent, making numbers up.
But you're going to put more into it.
And it's not going to appreciate then you go to B person, which is the person who buys maybe for a long-term appreciation location. Cash flow is a push, maybe a few bucks extra, but it's a push. But you're going for long-term appreciation. And then the C is a little bit of A and B combined. So I've been all three, okay? And so I've been to A, B, and C. Okay.
You've been to D and E too.
I don't know, but I've never been to past E. But I will say, just take your time, get educated. The opportunities are out there. With a lender money being available, like Charlie said earlier, there's a little bit more lax today than it was 5 or 10 years
Absolutely.
ago. There's always going to be a single-family home out there, and don't get upset if you don't get the house that you thought you were going to get. I mean, don't do that. There's always going to be another one.
Yes.
If you missed an opportunity, guess what? Learn from that, whatever it was, and move on to the next one. Don't dwell on what you did or didn't do. And again, with the Keller Williams Group and the people at the Waterstone people, they can help you get to the financing and find the property of your choice.
Dave, we're running out of time, but real quick, something I thinking this morning I wanted to go over, whether it be you or several other investors that we know that have been successful at this. When you talk to these guys and you say, well, maybe a deal that just didn't turn out exactly the way they thought it was going to, and maybe they could have got out of it. They could have figured a way out of it. But they said, I gave my word.
Yeah.
They really didn't care whether they'd signed anything or whether there was a little loophole that they could have got out of. They gave their word. You want to speak to that real quick? We got about a minute.
Well, I think your trust factor with the community, to the realtor, to the buyer, or to the seller that you're working with, and to the lender, you got to keep your word. And there are times that you just got to say, if I did make a mistake, but I'm going to keep my word to this transaction. If I paid too much for one, or maybe didn't do as well as I thought I was going to do, I still kept my word, and I moved on to the next one, because each house you're going to learn. It's a step process, and you're going to learn from one to the next.
Dave Herman, thank you very much. Will you come back again?
I sure will.
We'd love to have you back, because that was really informative.
Yes,
that was
very much so.
And if you have questions for Dave, either email me at cbutler@kw.com, or you can call me at 812-499-7758. How can they reach you, Evie?
They can call me at 812-463-3199 or email me at ebar@waterstonemortgage.com.
Or send me a private message on Facebook for the Charlie Butler team. So for Evie Barr, this is Charlie Butler. Have a great weekend.
You've been listening to The Real Estate Show on WGBF AM with the guy who guarantees to sell your home or he'll buy it himself, Charlie Butler. Join us every week at this time to find out how to sell your home quickly and for more money. For more information, email cbutler@kw.com or visit charliebutlerteam.com.